Welcome back here to Full Circle Florida as we bring in our political analyst, Dr. Susan MacManus, keeping it Florida-centric this week, taking a bit of a break from the national political scene. But I want to talk about a new economic problem that's been brewing in Florida that people are starting to pay attention to. This new condo law, it was passed after the Champlain Towers collapsed in Surfside. It's been a few years ago, believe it or not. Time flies. But it's created all kind of new rules for building maintenance. Condo owners are now getting hit with huge assessments, many forced out of their homes because they can't afford it. Governor DeSantis talked about it this week. He was asked if they're going to call a special session to tweak this a little bit. And he said, quote, "There's always been the possibility there could be unintended consequences and that the legislature owes it to their constituents to listen to them." That's from the governor. This is where I question what lawmakers do when they go up there and they pass all these new laws that apparently they don't know how it's going to trickle down or whether or not, to use the governor's words, it's going to have unintended consequences. We saw this with the book bans, and the governor admitted later, I think it was earlier this year, that that's gotten out of control, that he wants to rein that in. So why not just focus on the stuff that is hitting people's pocketbooks, like the cost of living and everything under that? You could just have one theme. Just focus on that.
Well, you would have to focus on every dimension of the budget. You'd have to focus on education, transportation, health care, law enforcement, you name it, because every dimension has an economic issue. Now, the condo issue is very serious. Mm-hmm. It also has to do with how long people have owned their condos, because the law says that any condo that's 30 years or older has to have an inspection, because the problem with the collapse of that building at Surfside, they hadn't been inspected in years.
Right.
So they were dominantly thinking about safety. Well, lo and behold, suddenly they realized a lot of these people that lived in these older condos are older. They don't have the money. They're not as wealthy as some of the condo owners around here. And suddenly, to make them adhere to the inspection requirements, they have to up their fees. So it's not as simple a thing.
Yes. It's a huge bill. I mean, Some of these people are having to move out of their homes. So you look at the cost of living in Florida, and 23 million people, we just passed that mark recently. You got to wonder, do Florida voters blame the governor and Florida lawmakers for the cost of living pain that they feel in the state, particularly with insurance? Or do they blame the federal government and Joe Biden? And how might that transfer into this presidential election?
Well, it's funny you asked that question, because Florida Atlantic University just did a poll that was released last week, which asked the question of who they blame most for the cost of living. And it was 38% blamed the federal government and 29% blamed the state. A lot of other people didn't have an opinion, or thought both of them were to blame. So a little bit more on the federal side. But then again, when you look at this issue, it's also complex, because cost of living can mean everything from utilities to childcare to insurance, you name it.
Many different facets. Dr. Susan MacManus, thank you as always for being here. Appreciate it. Next on Full Circle Florida, a new kind of justice system for troubled veterans.